Hello and welcome to the podcast Filosoferica. I am your host, Erikaribu, and today my guest is Eric Maisel. Is that correct? How do I say your last name?
Maisel, actually.
Maisel.
May like the month of May.
Oh, okay, Maisel. Yeah,
Yep.
good. So, Maisel, you are a writer of more than 50 books, and you are a creativity coach helping people with their writing, creativity, and to publish their books. So, I discovered you through an event that the writer Jacob Nordby did a couple of years ago, and you did a workshop there. Afterwards, I bought one of your books, Coaching the Artist Within, which I found very, very fascinating and important. So, being a writer and a creative person myself, I've noticed how important it is to do certain things to stay in the creative flow. If not, it's easy to just, you know, wander around and do other things that are more exciting. So, this is what we're going to talk about today, how to coach the artist within. And welcome to the show.
Great to be here. I'm happy to talk about these subjects. These are my favorite subjects, so good to go.
So, people come to you to get help with their creativity. I'm wondering, is there a recurring pattern you see? Are there some common themes that people struggle with in their creativity that they need your help with?
There are a ton of common themes. It's hard to pull out what is the most important. Here are several. One is the existential challenge of believing that they matter or that their efforts matter. We have so many written products out there, so many words. And we're just postmodern people. We just have that sense that we're the universe's throwaways and there's no particular reason to do anything. So that deep existential wonder or worry about why to do things stops people in their tracks. The answer to that is that they have to reaffirm that they matter. It's almost that simple. They have to decide that they and their efforts matter. And they may have to find the right frame for that. And that might mean that they decide that reaching just a couple of people matters, that if they have a small audience, that matters. They have to find some way to articulate that what they're doing matters. So that's one constant theme is the existential challenge of mattering. Second theme is not liking criticism and having been criticized. I think most people who aren't writing have some seminal experience of being criticized, either constantly or occasionally in their youth, in the family, in school. Someone said something that still is haunting them. And it may not even be a particular statement. It may just be a feeling uh, of having been criticized, of being told that they didn't matter or that they weren't very good or that they didn't count. So if you've had those adverse childhood experiences, that's not going to help you very much. And then there's the way in which we don't understand the following distinction, and that is that even true thoughts that we think don't serve us. People don't quite they understand that negative thoughts don't serve them, but they don't quite understand that true thoughts may not be serving them. And by that I mean, if you're a writer and you have the thought, wow, there are a lot of writers out there, that's a true thought. That's a truth. But that's not helping you to think that there are so many writers out there. You have to actually dispute that thought, not by saying it's not true, because it is true, but by saying that doesn't serve me. That's not a good thought for me to be noticing how many writers are out there. So most writers don't have a good grip on their mind. They're not thinking thoughts that serve them. They're not supporting themselves. They're not advocating for themselves internally, which isn't going to help them. Fourth, the work is hard. Well, let me say that slightly differently. Most people don't want to accept the creative process. They'll pay lip service to it. They'll sort of say, of course, I love the creative process. I love to create. But they actually don't love the creative process because the creative process comes with lots of mistakes and messes and ordinary work and things that don't work and That's the process. And people don't really want to hear that they might spend 2 years working on a book that's no good, but they might. That feels like a lot of good money after bad or good words after bad to spend that much time on something that doesn't turn out well. But you have to embrace that deeply. That's why I'm always doing this with my hands. That is, I'm showing clients a body of work. You can't get too invested in the thing in front of you because that may or may not turn out well. You have to be in it for the long game of understanding that a lot of our work is just ordinary. We accept that of other authors. We accept their ordinary work. We read a novel, we go, that was fine. We don't pan them, we don't diss them, we don't. But for our own work, ordinary isn't okay because we've set the bar at excellent or great or masterpiece or someplace. And so we don't have many successes if we don't consider our ordinary work successes. So this is hard to tolerate, the idea that a lot of the work may be just ordinary or less than ordinary, not okay. So there's that. And then there's the everyday resistance to writing. It's just a thin veneer of ice between us and the work, or thin veneer of something that needs cracking through each day. And I don't know why it's there necessarily, except that the work is hard and it's easier or something to just turn to the day and make a decision about what to have for breakfast and look at our to-do list and get on with things that we don't enjoy, but that are easier than the writing. So that thin veneer of resistance has to be cracked through each day. And I think folks, writers need maybe a ceremony or a device or an affirmation or something, a bell going off or something that reminds them that they need to crack through each day to get to the work. They may believe that that isn't necessary, or they may be telling themselves a different kind of story as to why they're not writing. Well, I can't write while my sister's visiting, or I can't write while I have papers to grade, or I can't write while the kitchen's being remodeled, or something. They're telling themselves that story. But in fact, it's never about that because we can always find 20 minutes to write, even if our sister is visiting or what have you. We could find the time. It's that resistance that needs cracking through each day. I'm going to put a period there because I know I'm just going on and on, but there are more themes.
Yeah, I'm sure we can circle back to some of these points. And I just have to say that I've been through all of these things that you're talking about, and also in some of my webinars and classes, we had this thing where so many people recognized that in high school or in middle school, they had experience with channeling or kind of receiving, instead of thinking of something smart to say, they were very open, spiritual,
Yep.
creative children. And so they kind of received and channeled texts. And many of them, actually, we were surprised how many in that webinar heard from the teachers that, no, this, you haven't written this, this is too good. This is cheating. So that was one of the things that actually made them stop writing as adults, because of these teachers that didn't believe in them, that didn't believe that they had this uh, ability. So, yeah.
No, that's right. I think for some portion of the human race, and I don't know what the percentage is, I could just make up a percentage, but I don't know what it is. But some portion of the human race pop out of the womb a little more stubborn than the next person, a little more energetic, a little more creative, a little more individualistic, and that person is going to be fighting conventionality whole life long, whether it's what's going on at the dinner table or what's going on in school or what's going on in the wider society. Conventionality is the mean. That's how societies work. Go along to get along. And if you're an individual, you're not going to like that. That's going to be pretty much intolerable. So you're going to try to go your own way, and society will push back. And that one can give up on that at some point. Just be sort of tired of society pushing back, or the family pushing back, or school pushing back, and just give up and decide to live a conventional life. That's going to be disappointing. It's not going to feel good. And there's going to be lifelong disappointment around never having gotten to their real work. But still, for that person, it feels easier to be conventional, to get a job that pays, to have a salary, what have you, than to fight in the artistic marketplaces, which are hard places to be.
Mm. Yeah, I saw that you have a book. I'm not sure the title, but I liked what it said. It was something about being spiritual and creative and not fitting in, or something like that, about being a creative being and how many times you don't fit in to the
Yeah, I
conventional
say that in,
society. Yeah.
yeah, I say that in many books, so I don't know which one we're talking about, but that's right. Um, we don't fit in, and it's an act of resistance and rebellion to stay the course as a creative person. It's very complicated to, just to give one example of the difficulties that creative people face. If you're successful, which is already rare, but if you're successful, then your audience wants two things of you and they're contradictory. They want you to repeat what they love, and they want you to break new ground. They
Mm,
want you to advance and also stay put. And that actually is very confusing to creatives, how to do that, but in fact, it can't be done. You have to do one or the other, but you can't really do both. And if you try to do something new or different, your audience is likely to rebel, to really get angry at you for not producing volume two, volume three, volume four in the series, but to try to do something else. I'm reminded of Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the Sherlock Holmes stories. He came to hate Sherlock Holmes because that's all readers wanted him to write. Yet another Sherlock Holmes story. He wanted to write his novels. He thought his novels were better than Sherlock Holmes. Nobody read his novels.
mm,
They only wanted Sherlock Holmes. So you may remember what Arthur Conan Doyle tried to do. He tried to kill Sherlock Holmes off by pushing him off a cliff in one story, and his fans would not allow it. They demanded that did not happen. And under that pressure, Arthur Conan Doyle had to bring Sherlock Holmes back in the next episode. He hadn't really fallen off the cliff. He'd just fallen a little bit off the cliff and he hung on to something and he's still alive. Don't worry, he's still alive. It's a very strange pressure for a creative person to be under, whether it's a painter, musician, anybody, where you haven't, what if it's hard enough to get an audience and then that audience is demanding and fickle. That
mm.
audience wants what it wants.
Oh my God, it sounds like an impossible task. And I'm more of a, well, I publish my own books mostly, and I have my online business. I have my people, so it's probably
That's right. You can
less,
maintain your independence better. Yep.
yeah, it's less pressure, I would guess, than being in a more, yeah, commercial market. So, yeah, but it must be an impossible task, like you're saying. It's,
It isn't impossible. Many of
mm,
these tasks are flat out impossible tasks. They don't have real solutions. We just live with the uncomfortableness and the sort of existential anxiety of these things not having answers. And then we just try to find our way as best we can in an arena that has no real answers.
mm. So let's go back to the things we talked about with the main points that people come to you for help with. So we have all of this resistance. So what do we do? You write about it in your book, how to coach ourselves. How do we
What do
do
we
that?
do?
Yeah, what do we do to coach
What do we
ourselves?
do? Well, first of all, I am a retired therapist, but I don't do therapy, and coaching is not therapy. So therapy is one kind of model, which is hard to describe. It actually has a couple of different faces to it, about diagnosing and treating mental disorders on the one hand and just being of a certain kind of support on the other. But coaches don't do therapy. We are more practical and future oriented. I'm happy to hear you talk about your childhood, but that's not really where I want to go. I want to know what you mean to do next week in support of your writing. So, what do we do? I invite dash advise dash demand that writing clients get to their writing first thing each day. That's the most important thing. Doesn't matter if you want to say I don't want to get up early. I don't care what you want to say that it's going to interfere with your yoga or your walking your dog, or it does not matter to me what reason you're going to give me why this is impossible. I'm going to say fine, great, but you haven't been getting to your writing. Writing's difficult for you. 6 months have passed without you writing. Please try my way. And my way is to get up first thing in the morning and go directly to the writing. Doesn't matter for how long. I don't care if it's 5 minutes or 15 minutes or half an hour. Just staying in touch with the writing day in and day out is the biggest deal. And then I give my little pitch, my little spiel about why first thing is important. And there are three reasons why getting to your writing first thing is the most important thing you can do as a writer. The first is you get some writing done. That's the obvious one. You will be building a habit of daily writing by getting to the writing every day. So that's A. B, and most people do not know this at all. B is if you go there first thing, you get to make use of your sleep thinking, and that is you get to make use of what your brain's been working on during the night. Everybody knows about dreaming, and they confuse dreaming and thinking because at night the brain does both. It creates dreams, but it also thinks about things, and it will write your novel for you if you will let it. If you give it a sleep thinking prompt the night before, like, I wonder what Mary wants to say to John in chapter 3. If you invite it in, it'll work on your novel and you'll be having conversations between Mary and John. And then when you wake up, all you have to do is take dictation. It's all there. It's like that experience you were saying about channeling. It's another version of how the brain can just give you stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't get to the writing first thing, that all evaporates. All that sleep thinking leaves you as soon as you've turned to the new day. So writers are losing hour and a half, 2 hours of free thinking by not getting to their work first thing. And it's a shame. I find that to be one of the big shames of the creative life is that folks don't understand how much free creative time they're losing by not getting to their creative work first thing. So that's two. First is you get a lot done. Two is you get your sleep thinking available. And three is the existential reason. If you do some real work first thing each day, then that day will be less meaningless. You will have built up some meaning capital by virtue of getting some real work done. And then the day can be half meaningless and you won't get depressed because you've gotten some real work done. These are this is a different way to live a life, to get to your real work first thing each day rather than, gosh, the news? Is that where you want to go first thing each day? Does a human being want to go to the news or to your to-do list first thing or nowhere in particular or just idly go onto the net someplace and spend? It's not the way we're supposed to be living our lives. And everyone knows it, but they're trapped in certain routines that are just easier than getting to their creative work.
Yeah. So thank you for your sharing your knowledge and advice. And I've heard different things from different writers. For example, you don't have to write every day. You can write once a week, especially for those who have, a lot of trauma coming up when they're writing or anxiety, and it works better for their nervous system to write once a week. That's one thing. One thing I thought about when you were talking. And the other thing is what I usually do is the morning pages, Julia Cameron.
Yep.
So that's what I
I
do.
have, but I have responses to both of those before we go on.
Yeah, okay,
A,
let's do that. Yeah.
I have to get my clients to stop their morning pages finally after
Really?
50 years. Absolutely. There has to be evening pages or middle or noon because they're using all their good words up on their morning pages and they won't get to their book that way. I've had too many clients who have 30 completed journals of morning pages and no book yet. And that's not okay. It's not that morning pages or journaling isn't valuable. It's completely valuable. It's just not the way to start the day. By the way, parenthetically, Julie and I, our first books in this area came out the same season from the same publisher in 1993, 1994, somewhere in there. The Artist's Way and my book, Staying Sane in the Arts, they came out the same season. So I've been traveling this path with her for a very long time, 30 years or more. fighting with her people around morning pages because
That's so funny.
it's not a good idea to have them be morning pages. If you're trying to get a book done, if you're not trying to get a book done, or if you're not trying to be a creative person, fine. Do your morning pages. Do your Tai Chi, your meditation, your exercise, your morning pages, do your whole routine. You just won't get your creative work done. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a good idea. So there's that, morning pages. And then the once a week, I completely disagree. Because for most human beings, most creative people, they discover that if they try to write once a week, 6 months go by and they've gotten no writing done. That's just what happens because they're not in touch with what they do. If they even manage to get there that one time, most of the time is spent trying to remember what their book's about or where they are, because that's just too much time between creative stints. So I'm against once a week. I'm for 7 days a week because I think our meaning needs don't end on the weekend. It's a strange idea to me that we should have no meaning needs on the weekend. So it's a 7 day a week simple practice of getting to the work. And if people fight with that, arm wrestle with that, that just means that something's going on where it's easier to not do the work than to do the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And perhaps different things work for different people. Could be. I know people that have finished several books by writing a couple times a week, once a week. So, you know.
That's great, of course. Obviously, the proof is in
Mm,
the pudding. It works for a person. I
mm,
would I would still be curious if one checked in with them if they feel like they would have been even more productive if they had operated differently. Because let's say they got 3 books done over 15 years. I mean, Simenon, the Belgian writer who wrote in Paris,
mm-hmm,
wrote his books in 3 weeks' time. That's not the model, but that's something to think about that people often spend a lot, a number of years on a book when they could have done the book more quickly if they'd attended to it more often. I'm not saying this is a should. I'm just saying this is something to think about as a writer. Do you want to get to your third and fourth and fifth book sooner, or do you want to spend an inordinate amount? This is especially true for memoirists who get stuck, of course, first of all, not having a story that has ended since they're still alive and living. But many memoirists get stuck 5, 10 years into their memoir, not getting it done, and that just saddens me that they don't get it done more expeditiously.
mm. Yeah, I agree with you that we could produce more if we are showing up for the work more regularly than perhaps once a week. So that's absolutely a good point. And for myself, I have the experience of writing morning pages, like as a like getting me to start writing, and then I go on to my other writing. So I guess it also depends how much time you have and all of that. But yeah,
That's
anyways,
right.
we
And
could,
that get on to the other writing. It already means something. And that puts you in a different category from most morning page writers who don't get onto the writing. That's great. If it's
mm,
a kind writer uses the phrase preambling, if the morning pages is a sort of preambling to the writing, that's great.
yeah, yeah. So also in the book you talked about it a little bit before that we have to learn how to create in the middle of things. And I love that expression because so many times I hear from writers and I do that myself that no, right now, my life is chaotic. I have this and that and my work and I don't have time and I don't have money. So if we have all these excuses, how do we still how are we able to still create in the middle of all this? Do you have any examples how of people being in the middle of I don't know, very chaotic life
Well,
situations
I
and
mean,
still being able to create?
everyone is in the middle of
Yeah.
nowadays a lot of health problems and financial problems and uh, s- just political unhappiness and all kinds of things are going on. So everybody is in the middle of severe things. I'll give you an example, and this is about intentionality and belief in the importance of one's work and trying to be of some service with one's work, all kinds of different ideas. But I'm thinking of Shostakovich, the Russian composer, who composed a couple of his most famous and greatest symphonies while the siege of Stalingrad was going on, and the city was surrounded by the German army, and people were starving. And in those circumstances, not only did he compose symphonies, but he organized concerts to keep up the spirits of the people trapped in Stalingrad by the German army. He did that under the severest of circumstances, and this is revealing. And then after the war, he stood up to Stalin. He was the same person all along, the same kind of creative dash resistance dash individual dash hero dash person, the whole all along. And that manifested in different ways. But when you are that person, and I'm just going to call it a resistance fighter, which is maybe a strange way to say it, but if you're that person, then you know that you are resisting, that you know that you're in a set of circumstances that are not okay. You're not trying to disguise that fact from yourself or minimize that fact from yourself. You're saying these are not the best of times. My health, I only have 2 hours of strength on a given day. That's all I've got. Maybe I've got chronic fatigue. That's all that's what I've got to work with. But you have to believe that your work is important. That's still the bottom line, because you could easily say, I only have 2 hours of strength each day, therefore I can't get to my work. I just don't have enough time for it. So it's partly cognitive, that it's partly what we say to ourselves. We can say I have no time, or we can say time to work. We can decide which thing we mean to say. It's partly psychological. That is, if we're in conflict about the goodness of our work, or if our still hearing our parents say we should get a real job, or whatever that all is the psychological component. And then there's the existential component about not really. Let me go someplace else for a second, just off the loop for a second. I don't believe that there is a purpose to life. That's not my belief system. I believe that we have life purposes that we choose, that many things are important to us. There isn't one thing, which means that I don't believe that creating is the be all and end all. It's just one of the many things that might be important to a person. Relationships might be important, parenting, service, activism, our own health. Many things might be important.
Mhm.
So that's already a distinction that's different from how most people think. They're still looking for the purpose of life, which confuses them because there isn't any. So that hunt I don't find very valuable. I don't think that's serving people to be hunting. They need to make choices about what's important. So
Mhm.
that's A, life purposes versus life purpose. But as important is the idea of what is meaning. And most people think that meaning's out there somewhere. There's something to find. Man's Search for Meaning, that famous book title, Man's Search for Meaning. There's nothing to search for. There's no meaning out there. It's a subjective psychological experience. It's a feeling, to say it simply. And as a feeling, it naturally comes and goes. I know it's slowly going to get somewhere, but as a
It's okay.
feeling,
Yeah.
it naturally comes and goes, which people don't understand. They think that if life is feeling meaningless, that something big has happened. Nothing big has happened. Meaning left for a while. It's on vacation. For Thursday and Friday, meaning went on vacation. He'll be back on next Tuesday. But people don't understand that meaning comes and goes, so they find it hard to do their work because they're not experiencing meaning from the activity of writing their novel. Let's say it was a sloggy day. It was not a great day writing your novel. You wrote 3 paragraphs, took 2 out, don't know what the book's about anymore. You're just in some weird place. And so that day felt meaningless. And so we go down that rabbit hole to existential depression of my life is meaningless, or my book is meaningless, or what I'm doing is meaningless. And that has to be counteracted by the understanding that activities in the service of meaning don't have to feel meaningful. That is, if you keep reminding yourself, this book is meaningful to me. I may only get the experience of meaning for 13 seconds on the third day after I finish the book. That's the only experience of meaning I get out of this whole thing, which doesn't sound like much, but that's okay because that's how meaning works. So we have to keep reminding ourselves that these activities, whether it's painting or photographing or composing or whatever it is, filmmaking, that on a given day, it may be a terrible day and it's still in the service of meaning. That allows us to get up the next day and do it again. So one of the artful practices of getting things done in the middle of things is to remind ourselves that the thing we're doing does not have to feel meaningful as we're doing it. That's not how most people understand meaning or think about meaning. They think that if they're doing their righteous work, it ought to, they want some guarantee somehow that if they're doing the right thing, it ought to feel meaningful. If I'm sitting here and doing my writing, I should get some experience, some good feeling from it. Like the universe owes them a good feeling. No, because they may just have a bad day at the writing.
Yeah, and when you're talking now, I'm thinking about meditations for those who are meditators out there.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's like it's the same every day. It's not going to be the same. It's not going to be a good meditation. Someday you're going to be all thinking all the time. Other days you're going to be restless. It's going to be so, and the work is to
That's
come
right.
to the mat and
And the word is
sit.
practice.
Yeah.
And the word is practice. That is, if you have a meditation practice or a spiritual practice, you need a writing practice
Mm.
where you're showing up to the writing every day as a feature of your practice,
Yep.
irrespective of what goes on during those 20 minutes or hour and a half, irrespective of what goes on, this is your practice because it's one of your life purposes, not your only one. And I do believe that people need to schedule their multiple life purposes onto their weekly calendars because otherwise, most people are not getting to their life purposes.
Oh,
They're
really?
just not
That's your
getting.
experience? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. They're getting things done off their to-do lists. But if they actually were to stop and identify their five or six or seven top life purposes, they would discover that they're not getting to their activism or they're not getting to their creativity, or that there's something two or three of those seven are not being attended to because they don't have this list of life purposes sort of sitting on their desktop next to them.
Mm.
That's not the way most people have their to-do list sitting, or multiple to-do lists, or all kinds of to-do lists, but not their life purposes to-do list. That's not sitting there.
Yeah, and I'm thinking it's not that weird either because in school we're not taught how to find our purpose or even to think
Heavens
about it,
no.
or that's not how society works. So maybe you have a crisis or something happens that you crack open and then you start to find it. But for most people, it's just like you say, a to-do list. Life just goes on, you know.
And as a matter of being a citizen of conventional societies, we're not supposed to be asking the question, what's important? We're supposed to be asking the question, what are we supposed to do? Who are we
Mm.
supposed to follow? Not what's important. That's
Hmm.
not, that's, all the religions say that's not up to us to decide what's important. That's given to us, including the non-God religions. There still are steps to get somewhere, Buddhism or Taoism, still trying to get somewhere according to the philosophy or religion, as opposed to deciding for ourselves what's important, which is sort of the pure existential position of personal responsibility. And that's what I'm selling is the personal responsibility here. We have to decide what's important to us and what what makes us proud. Which of our efforts make us proud and which of our efforts disappoint us.
Mm. Yeah. I agree. So when you're talking now, I get curious about your own experience with finding meaning and creativity in writing. How,
Wait, I've got to interrupt you because there's no finding of meaning.
okay, so how did you discover your own?
Nope, no discovery.
So how, okay, how do you do it then? When you're not discovering, you're
I,
not finding it.
I'm playing, but what I want to underline is how our default language keeps this finding meaning and
Mm.
finding purpose alive. That's our default language. It's not you. That's everybody's
So
default
you
language.
choose it. How did you choose your
Make it.
meaning?
I,
Yeah.
I make my own meaning. The full sentence is I try to coax meaning into existence.
Hmm.
It's a coaxing. It's
Yeah.
not a finding or seeking. It's an attempt to do those things which might prove meaningful.
Hmm.
So, well, go on with your question. I know
No,
I was
I was
really
just
interested.
curious about how your own writing started in your own creative path, and then how a typical day or week looks for you, as
Well,
you know all of this. Yeah.
yeah, the whole path. I mean, that's one of those long journey questions. Um, but I was born in 1947, right after the war, in a Irish, Italian, Jewish neighborhood of Brooklyn. The war was still on everybody's mind. We had concentration camp survivors and people with the concentration camp tattoos on their forearms, and that was that world. And the idea of being a resistance fighter was very important to me, even at the age of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Something about that image or that idea stuck with me. And that's been an organizing principle for me my whole life. That is trying to point out what's not okay, whether that's my belief that religion is a betrayal of our common humanity, to what I don't believe about psychiatry and the current mental disorder paradigm, to this, that, and the other thing. So a lot of my energy or motivation is in whistleblowing. It's just in saying this is not okay and that's not okay and the other thing's not okay. And that's been a prime motivator all along. But as to what interested me, I started out as a math and science boy. I thought I'd be an astrophysicist at the age of 10. That's what I thought I was doing. I went to a special math and science high school. I was just targeted in my own mind for physics. Somewhere along, and simultaneously, I was reading fiction and existentialism and the other stuff that really interested me, but I thought I was a science boy. That stopped interesting me because had no human face to me. It was not about our species. It was about interesting things, big numbers or E equals MC squared or this or that. It was about stuff that didn't interest me. So then I didn't know what I was doing. Post science, I started college at the age of 16, which was young, and managed to flunk out in 2 years quickly because I went to no classes because no classes interested me. So I spent 2 years not going to classes, mostly playing ping pong and having a girlfriend and doing those kinds of things. And so at the age of 18, having been kicked out of college, and this was during the Vietnam War era, I enlisted in the Army, which was another thing that people do when they have no idea what they're doing. And then when I got out, I continued to have no idea what I was doing. So I did the next thing that people do when they have no idea what they're doing. I got a degree in philosophy, which is, of course, one of those things you do and you have no idea. But then at 24, I started writing my first novel, which I was destined to do all along. Actually, I wrote my first book when I was about 7 or 8, when I was in bed for a couple of months with rheumatic fever, and I sort of made a book, sort of cut things out and made a book, and how kids make books. That was probably my first book. But at 24, I started on my first novel, um, and knew that that's what I was doing. I'd always known it, but didn't know it until I knew it, and then I knew it. And then I also worked as a ghostwriter in my 20s. I could write a book in a month about anything. Give me any subject. I don't know, singles bars or buying Persian carpets or making making meals in your blender or anything. I wrote books about, I can't even remember, biorhythms, everything. It was one of my talents, was to write a book quickly in a month. And so I lived by writing in my 20s, which is semi-amazing to be able to do it. Um, but then at some point there was little kids and we needed more money and what have you. So then I had to face that the writing was not making enough money, and then I went to school and became a family therapist, and then subsequently a coach. So over these many years, I've been writing from 24 to now, which is going on 55 years. I've probably done 60 or 70 books, 50 of which have been published, some of which haven't because they weren't good enough or never found their publisher or their audience. So I've done a lot of writing over this time. And I guess another way, two things I would add, which they both sound strangely simple. One is I enjoy it. Not every writer enjoys writing. And I think that's a problem if you don't actually enjoy making sentences and making paragraphs and making chapters and making books, and you're sort of fighting with yourself about the fact that you don't enjoy it. That's not a recipe for sitting there. So I would just say it's luck. One of the lucky things is I enjoy sitting there. And the other is I just find our species endlessly curious. I'm endlessly curious about what goes on with us, especially about this would take me in a different direction, but especially about the authoritarian personality and why people follow the Hitlers of the world. Just what's in the followers mentality. Who the Hitlers are, that I think I get. I get who they are. But how tens and tens of millions of people follow them, that still strikes me as a curiosity. And
Mm.
so I'm endlessly curious about who we are and keep wanting to write about it.
Wow. Thank you for sharing your story. And it's a really good point what you're saying about actually liking to sit there and wanting to sit there. And you're lucky that you like the
Part of
work.
it,
Because I've,
there's more there's
yeah,
more luck in life. There's more luck in life that we kind of want to acknowledge. Some things are just lucky.
yeah. And because I'm talking to so many writers, and some days, including myself, I just fighting, like you say, I'm fighting with sitting there because I rather would do something else and I'm restless and,
Yep.
so. Yeah, I'm actually a little bit envious of you right now that you're saying these
Yeah,
things.
I
Yeah.
understand that.
Mm.
And some books, sort of the on-demand books, I don't enjoy being there because they're a little too mechanical
Hmm.
or whatever the right word is. And then when I get to do a book that I can do in my own voice, so to speak, I'm really happy sitting there. And
Yeah.
maybe I could probably name, 20 of the 50 or 60 books that I really enjoyed sitting there and doing. And then many that, you do them.
Mm.
You do it because they make sense to do and they will be of service and they're appropriate to do and they're wanted. All of those reasons, which are reasons,
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
reasons.
I've done both types of books myself, and also, I'm like you, like everyone, we enjoy much
We
more when
enjoy
we
what we
can
enjoy.
do our
That's right.
own voice, follow our own
When I
vision.
can
Yeah.
get lost, when I can get lost in the story where there's narrative,
Hmm.
I still probably like writing fiction more than nonfiction. I just don't have a lot of internal permission to write fiction right
Hmm.
now because the nonfiction is what's wanted. Um, but I would, at the drop of a hat, write a novel and enjoy it if I had. If some publisher came to me and said, "Do you have a novel in your mind that you'd like to work on?" I would sort of drop everything and write it because
Yeah.
that's still the most fun to me. And I've done certain novels where it's very clear to me what the sequel to it would be and how much fun it would. I did a novel not so long ago set in 1946 France,
Hmm.
right after the war. It has a certain plot, but the 11-year-old protagonist is 11 in 1946, and I want to follow her to 1953 Paris when she's 18-ish. So I'm ready for the sequel to that if anybody were to want it.
Well, maybe some publishers in Norway are going to listen to this, and then, who knows? Let's,
Yes, as long
yeah,
as they don't want it, as long as they don't want it in Norwegian.
yeah, that'd be kind of tricky.
That would be a little tricky.
Well,
Yeah,
I'll pray for you that you will get to write your novels.
well, thank you. And I may do it anyway. I may just carve out, because it does not take me long to write a 50 or 60,000 word book, a couple of months. I might just carve out a couple of months.
Well, either way, I have to say I'm really impressed with you writing over 50 books, 60, 70, 80. Yeah, it just shows that you're very disciplined and you're lucky, like you said, and you
Yeah.
found a recipe. You stick to it,
Hmm.
you're tenacious. So,
Yeah. And so somewhere along the line, I understood and agreed that I'm an entrepreneur and that there is a marketplace and that I had to not thumb my nose at the marketplace, that it was not going to serve me if I were not a salesperson, an advocate for my own work. I would not have had the chance to do all these books if I didn't also support them in the ways in which publishers want their books supported. I had to play those games. I have to play those games. Whether I love them or not, I'm easy with them now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of my last questions, you're in the book you're writing about upholding dreams and testing reality. We've been talking about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
yeah, you're saying that you have to dream large and then also do reality testing. So could you say a little bit more about that? I know many of my people in my audience, they have big dreams, including myself, and then, you know, getting into the reality can be really hard. So sometimes the dreaming can feel better. So how do we do this?
Well, it's a little too soon to write your Nobel Prize winning speech before you've written your novel. That's a little cart before the horse. Um, because we have the kinds of minds we have, we like fantasizing, which is not a problem. I think fantasy is lovely. The problem is if we don't do the work required that turns our dreams into reality. It's a very simple idea that we have to uphold both, that we have to honor both. Many people lose their dreams. Let's say you've written two novels that no traditional publisher wants. It's hard to work on that third novel. It's hard to still have the dream of being a successful best-selling author when you know that your first two novels are sitting in a drawer somewhere. It's hard to uphold that dream. So I think we ceremonially need to uphold that. We need to find our own methods of upholding the dream. I think a nice way is just to create a little altar, a non-spiritual or spiritual altar that's on our sitting on our desk somewhere or next to us with maybe, postcard of a cafe or just the stuff that writers like, a couple of special pens or this or that, something to remind us of the dream. Because, and let me say it a second way also, just as a Dharma teacher would say that he or she is in some lineage, we're in some lineage. I think writers are in a lineage. We're not here just suddenly in 2025. We're in the lineage of whatever lineage it is for you, whether it's the lineage, for me, it's the lineage of existential writers, the Dostoevsky's, Camus, Kafka's, Orwell's. There's a lineage for me of existential writing, dating all the way back to Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius 2,000 years ago. There's an existential tradition. I'm in that tradition. And I think that's part of the way we support ourselves is under, if our tradition is sort of the Virginia Woolf literary novel tradition, that's our tradition. If it's Scandinavian literature tradition, then it's the Scandinavian literature. We're someplace in a tradition. For me, I think of it as the International Bohemian Highway, that we're on a highway with other folks wandering around, not going straight anywhere, just sort of wandering around, bumping into each other. Maybe it's some hostel in the Alps somewhere, bumping into each other, but on this journey together. So it's sort of a long-winded roundabout way of saying there are different ways to uphold the dream, but we have to do that work because the dreams fade. They get injured. Dreams get injured by reality. So we need to hold the dream somehow. That's the one side of the equation. And the other side of the equation is we need to align our thoughts and our behaviors with our intentions. We just have to get our thoughts in line and our actions in line with our intentions. If our intention is to be a writer, and let's even put an adjective there, a successful writer, if that's our intention to be a successful writer, then we have to do a lot of showing up. We have to not thumb our nose at the marketplace. We just have to do the work involved that matches our intentions. So I've just said in a lot of words the simple thing. There's a dream to uphold and there's stuff to do.
Hmm. Taking action, aligned action with to get where you, yeah, to
Yeah,
get to your
and
dream. Mm.
let me just add one sentence here. So I mentioned before about life purposes versus life purpose, and I believe in life purposes versus life purpose as an idea. But even though I believe in life purposes, I think we can still construct a life purpose statement that sort of captures the essence of who we are or what we want to do or who we want to be. I think that's a useful task to try to create a life purpose statement. Mine is do the next right thing. And if your life purpose statement does that kind of work, like do the next right thing, then you are constantly aligned with the idea of what's the right next action to take. That's a lot of intentionality. That means you're spending your whole day sort of demanding of yourself that you do the next right thing as opposed to the next easy thing or the next comfortable thing or the next whatever thing. That's a high bar place. Human beings don't like to set the bar that high to doing the next right thing. But in our conversation, we know that the folks listening do want that from themselves. They want to set the bar at exactly that high place of doing the next right thing. It's not easy, but that's the place to set the bar.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree and actually use that um, in writing or speaking it out loud to myself. If I don't know what to do, I always ask, what's the next step? What's the next right step? Because it's always this moment and it's only one step I can take now. And after I've taken that step, another step will reveal itself. So it's when you think at it that way, I think it's really good because it's easier than to think of a whole
Yep,
plan to come
that's
up
right.
with. Yeah.
That's right.
So thank you for bringing it up. And well, I think we're getting to the we could talk about this, I mean, for hours and hours, but to our listeners, I want to be respectful and not do an 2 hour episode. So do you have anything to add on how to, to maintain a creative life, how to continue on this creative path other than the things you already shared?
No, I don't have anything to add. I guess I would just sort of repeat the power of daily practice, just the importance of showing up in a daily way. And part of that ability has to do with not finding routine and regularity boring. I work with a lot of clients who say that that's not exciting to show up every day, or it's not this, or it's not that. But when we want to get serious about getting our work done, then we want to opt for routine and regularity, regimen, discipline. And for me, I never use the word discipline without using the word devotion because I think they go together. It's not just discipline, it's not just having the ability to show up to things. It's something that's coming from a place of love and passion and enthusiasm and devotion. Without those things, it's hard to just sit there out of discipline, just be a disciplined writer. I think we need a little passion, love, interest, curiosity, enthusiasm, all of those synonyms, or else we're not going to be able to sit there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've tried the disciplined way. I got so burnt out. So I tried adding a little bit of love into the enthusiasm and spirituality, and that's a whole nother story.
Yep.
So thank you for sharing that. And thank you
Yep.
so much for coming to share your wisdom. And I wish you the best of luck, especially with your novels that I hear that you're very
Mhm.
excited about and in all
Yep.
of your work. So thank you so much and good luck with everything.
Thank you for having me.